President Trump met with top U.S. Oil executives, including the CEOs of ExxonMobil, Chevron, ConocoPhillips, Phillips 66, and Marathon Petroleum to discuss the administration's plans to boost domestic energy production. Joining us now with the details, Energy Secretary Chris Wright. Mr. Secretary, it is good to see you. You know, around here, we don't like burying the lead. That's reporter talk. So we did it right at the top. Because they have not been to the... Do they know how to get to the White House? Any of those oil executives? How long has it been since they were at the White House? Not in the last 4 years.
Exactly. In fact, there were a few newer CEOs that had never been to the White House before. There were several that had been there before, but years ago. So, yeah, that was the first message. You know, they're no longer the scarlet letter on their foreheads now for producing over 80% of American energy. And the cost of that is just massively impactful on people's lives. So to pretend they're not important or we should somehow deny they exist, just one of the many absurdities of the last administration and why President Trump was elected to bring some common sense back.
There's a lot of different, depending on where you stand on the issues, Mr. Secretary. It's under the Biden administration, we got back to all-time highs in barrels per day. Did we not? But then on the other side, you hear critics say that the counterfactual would even be more if we didn't have, I don't know, ANWR or not being allowed to open up some offshore leases, et cetera. What can you say about that? Was it full bore for the oil company? Were they able to do maximum production under the constraints of the Biden administration, or can they even do more?
Oh, definitely can do more. And you're right. It was record high productions of both oil and natural gas. But the counterfactual is, of course, it would have been higher. No federal lease sales for the first couple of years of the Biden administration, slow rolling permits, not allowing pipelines or gathering lines to be built. That just means this stuff isn't developed. Didn't mean people didn't drill for oil and gas. But one of the points I made in my testimony to Congress a year ago was if you put barriers and at the margin you reduce the production of oil and gas, even when it's at a high level, if you reduce it by only a little bit and you do nothing to change demand, you're just guaranteed to get higher prices. And that, you know, we saw 4 years of that. Higher oil, higher natural gas prices than we should have had. Not high, but higher than we should have had.
Do you think that what was the impetus for that LNG? It seemed like a bone to the Green Lobby, I don't know, no new facilities, or has that been reversed? And can you talk about I mean, LNG is one of our greatest strengths in the United States for exports and for our own domestic energy use and everything else.
Oh, spot on, Joe. Look, it is the fastest growing export of the United States and our second largest export. Only oil and oil products do we export larger in dollar volume than liquefied natural gas. It's the fastest growing energy source on the planet over the last 15 years, and we're by far the biggest producer. So this is just a win all the way around. You know what the Biden administration did here is just actually crazy. They did a study because they were, remember, all of government about climate change. They did a study to see what would be the impact of growing LNG exports on climate, not on people or humans or allies, but on climate change. And the result was the more LNG you exported, the lower greenhouse gas emissions went. They should have done cartwheels and doubled down. Instead, they buried that study. It didn't acknowledge its existence. 4 months later, announced a pause to investigate the climate and price impacts of natural gas, and then did a new study that was more fiction than fact, and then released that, weeks after they left the door and said, oh, geez, the data shows it might be negative for Americans and for the climate. Just undermining government, undermining trust in science and facts and data. But we've reversed those days. On day one, we got rid of the LNG export ban. Permit ban, and I've already signed 5 actions in less than 100 days to get more of these terminals permitted, under construction, more American jobs, more American energy, and greater security for our allies around the world.
So, Secretary Wright, getting back to the meeting with Mike Wirth, the CEO of Chevron, Is the administration closer to extending that license? And what is the thinking behind it? I mean, what is the most compelling reason to do so? Is it because you want to box China out? Because if Chevron pulls out, China will step in?
Look, the president's broader agenda for sure is to grow American prosperity at home and influence and power abroad. And energy is just a fantastic tool to do that. So the vast majority of the dialogue that we had in that room was about how can we unleash American energy? How can we make it easier for people that want to invest and have specific projects to go ahead and develop them? So look, I won't go into any details there on some dialogues that are ongoing. But one of the things that was dialogued, the Biden administration did over 60 specific actions reducing development in Alaska, not just for oil and gas, but for mining or minerals or any economic activity for that state, far more sanctioned and restricted than Iran or Venezuela. You know, and then when oil prices went up, they asked Iran and Venezuela for more oil, drained our strategic petroleum reserve, and didn't remove a single sanction on Alaska or the rest of the western United States.
Well, I'm
so
curious,
again,
Secretary Wright,
the main point was... Go ahead.
Sure, but in terms of unleashing or lifting sort of the bureaucracy on drilling in new sites, I understand for other things other than oil. But with oil at 66, it's a very different equation here. Oil companies, I would imagine, this is what Mr. Wirth told you also, they don't want to drill more. They want to be disciplined about their capacity.
Yeah, all prices of oil and natural gas and all commodities, they're dictated by supply and demand. You know, nobody decides the price of oil. It's just supply and demand. But I think we've seen a market discounting the fact that clearly it's going to be easier to produce oil and gas in the United States. The restrictions and impediments we had in the last 4 years, they're gone. And so the market is discounting, yes, more supply is going to come, and that's pushed down prices of oil, gasoline, home heating fuels, everything across the board. That's a win to the American people. It'll remain a win for the companies as well, as if their costs are lower and their risks are lower, their break-even cost above which they're profitable, that's going to move down too. In fact, it's already moved down.
Mr. Secretary, do climate change advocates have reason to be worried? I've even seen some Republicans talk about a carbon tax. I think they're talking about a carbon dioxide tax. But if you say carbon dioxide, carbon sounds black and sooty and horrible, whereas carbon dioxide is this liquid, colorless gas. So they always say carbon, but carbon taxes, carbon sequestration, the IRA had giveaways to the green lobby that would blow your mind. Are those all going to be reversed or somehow frozen? Or I mean, how do you view the whole subject? Are you going to get to net zero by 2050, Mr. Secretary?
Absolutely not. Look, no country on earth will get to net zero on 2050, but the urgent efforts trying to do it have just driven up energy prices, move industries out. Look at what Germany's done. This is an industrial powerhouse. Most of their manufacturing industry has left the country. They've tripled their electricity prices, and they went from 80% of their energy from hydrocarbons to 74%. That took them over $500 billion, people impoverishment, industry exporting, they got down to 74%. Net zero by 2050, of course, is just nonsense. It's an activist thing, and it's a top-down big government justification to do mostly anti-human things. But what I will say to maybe not to the climate activists, but to the thoughtful people about climate change, we will follow the math and the science and be honest about the trade-offs here. Everything in life has trade-offs. If you can reduce greenhouse gas emissions without raising prices or reducing human freedom, that's a big win. And that's what the rise of U.S. shale gas has done by growing LNG export. We share that economic and reduced greenhouse gas benefit with the world. But we're going to treat things like they're real serious topics and not a quasi-cult religion where we'll justify anything in the name of climate change, even when it's a reversing of benefits from climate change, as the Biden administration did with the LNG pause. Return of common sense, I should say.
I was going to ask about the SPR. What's a good price for you? Where would you say I'd buy with both hands? What price? 50?
Oh, I never comment on oil prices because you just don't know where they're going to go and what they're going to happen.
You got to refill it. That was no crisis. That was no crisis. That was a crisis of a midterm coming or something. That was the crisis, and oil prices were too high.
Absolutely, 100%. And yes, we have stated right up front we will refill the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. You've got to get budget approval to do that, but 100% that's going to happen. Unfortunately, you can refill it a lot slower than you can drain it. But we've got to get going on that, and we will be going on that very soon. But yeah, it'll take years, but the Strategic Petroleum Reserve will be returned to its original use.